This is Kinda Murdery Season 1, Ghost Towns of the Mojave Desert, presented by Criminal Content.
You're rocketing down the 15 freeway between Vegas and LA. It's a scorched wasteland of Airstream meth labs and unrelenting heat. This is no place you'd want to stop. But the car's on fumes, so you take the exit and you pull up to the gas station. It's abandoned, a concrete canvas that some local Michelangelos turned into the Sistine Chapel of spray paint penis. A grave marker for every crazy story lost in the desert sands. These are the ghost towns of the Mojave Desert. And this is Kinda Murdery. Hey everybody, and welcome to Kinda Murdery Season 1, Ghost Towns of the Mojave Desert. I'm your host, Zevon Odelberg. Thanks for deciding to be here. Just off Highway 95, about an hour north of Death Valley, is the once-upon-a-time gold-soaked boomtown, now ghost town, of Goldfield, Nevada. Founded in 1902, Goldfield enjoyed Nevada's richest mineral strike just 2 years later and was transformed almost overnight into the state's wealthiest and largest town, boasting a population of 30,000 people and at Tex Rickard Saloon, what may be the longest bar in human history. So long, in fact, that it requires no fewer than 80 bartenders to work it. The mines were unfathomably rich, churning out over $86 million worth of ore, which translates to $2.6 billion today, and then was 30% of the state's total output. But Goldfield's day in the hot sun was short-lived. By 1910, the mines were drying up, and all but about 1,500 of Goldfield's 30,000 residents had moved on. Then, a flash flood in 1913 and a devastating fire in 1923 convinced most of the remaining to seek gentler climes. Today, fewer than 200 people live in this once jewel of Nevada, but those that remain lay claim to Goldfield's 119-year history of being kinda murdery, pretty darn murdery, and absolutely, positively, super-duper murdery. Alright, hey everybody, welcome to Kinda Murdery. Thanks for being here. I'm here today with Sean Christensen and Brendan Hubbard from Criminal Content, Adam Volrich, my on-air producer, and of course, the prodigiously talented, the Mozart of the drums, drummer for Dr. Dog, Taylor Swift's recent release, and all kinds of other fantastic things, including touring the world with King Crimson, a man I am humbled to be in the presence of, like Wayne and Garth bowing before Alice Cooper. I say hello to none other than Eric Slick. Hey Eric, thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Oh wow, what an introduction. I will never be able to live up to anything that you said.
Well, honestly, I was listening to Wiseacre this morning, and you already have, man. I dig that album. It's awesome. It's great work.
Thanks. You know, I just farted it out, so I'm super happy that you like it.
Anyway, let's see. So I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to ask you, what are you up to these days? I mean, obviously, we just mentioned Wiseacre's out. It's great. What else have you been working on? What do you have on the horizon? What are you excited about? Tell us a little bit about what's cranking in Slick's world.
Well, what's cranking over here is that people have been sending me songs over Twitter and Instagram, and basically I've just been tracking drums remotely for anybody and everybody who sends me something. So it's really run the gamut. I played on a song called Scientist Funk that was spelled Phunk. That was about 10 minutes long. I've played on some sort of like Bright Eyes influenced folk stuff, and it's been a huge challenge. I mean, I've also never recorded remotely or at home before, so it's been challenging but rewarding in that way.
So being a human synthesizer isn't as easy as it sounds. Then I guess is what you're telling me. You're like a keyboard drum machine, except a phenomenally talented sentient being, and it's not that easy.
No, it's not that easy. Yeah. You can unplug me. I'm not the small wonder you thought I was.
Oh. So I saw all over the internet that when Taylor Swift re-released her album Fearless, you drummed on that, right? That must have been a phenomenal experience, I imagine.
It was totally insane. I mean, I did not know I was playing on it. I got sent a couple tracks, and then I was on a Taylor Swift record. It was just like one day I woke up and I was on a Taylor Swift record. Sounds like a movie.
It does. I think it stars. You're like in that traditional Jennifer Lopez Cinderella role, except you're this badass guy from Philly. It's like a body swap for sure.
It's like a rom-com. You know, it's kind of like it's kind of like that rom-com failure to launch. So I've just been a failure to launch for years, and I think I'm launching. I think this is the beginning of my launch.
I think we've all been there. You know, do you have a story you can tell us from those sort of harrowing, haven't quite figured my life out years yet?
Yeah, and I was living in this like super depressing house with a bunch of college kids who were like.
You can just say Philadelphia. You were living in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was living in Philadelphia. No, but my roommates like was stapling stuff to our backyard tree, like stapling like live animals and keyboards. I lived with an insane person.
Stapling live animals? Can we talk about that, please?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I had a roommate.
You don't have to name him.
No, I had a roommate who had a thing called the science tree in the backyard, and one time I came home, and I kid you not, I've been vegetarian for like 15 years, and in the house, like, my pan was like, do not cook in Eric's pan. That's the vegetable pan, you know? And I came home from a tour. I walked in the house with my suitcase, and he was cooking a live mouse in my pan.
What?
Oh, my God.
He's a full-on sociopath.
Yeah, talk about Kinda Murdery.
Yeah,
that is extremely murdery.
Is this guy in jail or an institution, or are you guys still just hanging out on Thursday nights? I mean, what's up with him these days?
I think he's a Buddhist now.
Thank Christ.
I'm pretty sure.
He ruined so many karmic cycles for so many different souls that he finally figured it out. I mean, my goodness.
I think so.
He's going to be a mouse getting cooked in a pan in the next life, it sounds like.
I think he probably deserves that, but who knows? Maybe he's getting his karma correct right now.
So he really called it the science tree. I mean, as if to sort of justify his sadism, I guess. Like, it's all in the name of science.
Yeah. He got a tattoo of it.
Of the tree?
He got a tattoo of the tree, like, right before we moved out of that house. It had, like, a synthesizer stapled to it. At one point, he went in through my bedroom and took an entire dresser and put it through my window and put it at the top of the tree. An entire dresser.
Holy shit.
So I take it he was mentally ill, probably, right? I mean, he was some kind of a paranoid schizophrenic or bipolar or something? I mean, I'm not that I'm a doctor, but...
No, he was just on a lot of Adderall, I think.
Oh,
that'll do it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he was just...
It all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Something's in the walls. The feds are coming for me. All I have to staple a keyboard to the tree to cut the signals. Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Pretty sure that was it.
All right, guys. We ready to start talking about the town of Goldfield, Nevada?
Let's do it. I'm done with this animals in a frying pan situation.
Sorry, I just had to tell the truth.
No, I think it's great. That's
I want to get as far away from the science tree as possible.
The science tree.
Don't go near the science tree.
You know, it sounds like a kid's show on Disney Plus or something, like, until you hear the details.
Yeah, it sounds like this is where Bill Nye lives, and then it isn't.
Baking cookies with the Keebler elves, and Bill's like, listen, we'll use molecular gastronomy and make some kick-ass fudge fingers. But anyhow... Taking a quick look at the itinerary here, it's clear that Goldfield, Nevada has plenty of attractions for kind of murdery tourists like us. First up, we'll hear how karma can catch up even to Russian nobles. That's right, it's Hines versus Count Padorsky. And then we've got Scourge of the Postmasters, or Mama's Droopy Tulips. And finally, a pox on both your hoes. It's Hard Luck for an English Dandy. Alright guys, you ready to rock and roll?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
He's like, I'm fucking slick. I'm always ready to rock and roll.
Let's go.
Alright, first up, we've got Hines versus Count Padorsky.
Is that like Heinz ketchup?
It is not. It's just a little double entendre I did for fun. It's Hines spelled Hines. But here we go. It's March 1907, and mesmerizing relation of Russian Tsar Nicholas's mother, the noble Count Padorsky, is eating dinner at Ajax Restaurant in Goldfield's red light district, when Jack Hines walks into the restaurant and guns him down. Why was Hines so murdery? Well, let's find out as we explore the bloodthirsty tale of Hines versus Count Padorsky. All right, so guys, this guy, Count Padorsky, is sort of a notorious figure in mining boomtowns all over America in the late 1800s and turn of the 20th century. He is a Russian nobleman, a count, who is purportedly a direct relation of Tsar Nicholas's mother. You know, this is an interesting time in Russia, of course, because there was the revolution. Tsar Nicholas just proposed the first Duma. Right before that, he started kicking all the Jewish people, including my great-grandparents, out of Russia. There's a lot of turmoil in Russia. Teddy Roosevelt's president in America, walk softly, carry a big stick. There's a lot going on internationally. Well, the Count is over in the U.S., and he travels from gold boomtown to gold boomtown, both staking claims and investing in mines.
Can you answer a question for me? What is
Absolutely.
a count? What does a count do? Like, I've heard of Count Dracula. I've heard of the Count from Sesame Street. Like,
Right.
what? Like, I guess I know what a czar is, but, like, what makes somebody a count? Can you explain that?
Well, you get bitten by a vampire, but then they also have you drink their blood. That's how it works.
You know, it is funny that you guys should ask that question, because rather than bore you with the British aristocracy and where a count ranks between like a lord and a duke, why don't we talk about what is a count in exactly that vampiric sense you mentioned? Because I think there's a bit to this story that suggests that perhaps this Count Padorsky was exactly what you just said, a friggin' vampire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, that's right. So he is up in the Yukon, in Alaska, investing in mines, and up there in Alaska, he meets J.C. Hines and Hines' wife. Hines is also a serial miner and mine investor, not so much like the old prospector, like, gee willikers, I found me a fortune, but more like the Count himself, one of the smart guys who knows how to make money without breaking his fingers to a nub panning for gold.
Like a Bitcoin harvester.
Exactly. Rather than diving down a mine shaft, he sits at home playing roadblocks while his computer mints new digital money. That's exactly right. And by the way, I should mention, because it will become relevant later, up in the Yukon at this time, there's sort of a quasi-Masonic secret society of miners called the Arctic Brotherhood. And the Arctic Brotherhood has chapters of, eyes wide shut, cloak and bird mask wearing, like, sexual fetish weirdos all over the country at this point, but they are founded, in fact, in Yukon. I don't actually know if they're eyes wide shut sex fetish people, but, I mean, they are weird Old West miners, so probably. That's my take. And so Hines is a member of this Arctic Brotherhood, and he befriends Padorsky, and now the Hineses normally live in Seattle. And they're members of sort of society, they're wealthier people. Well, the Count begins to ply Mrs. Hines with wine. And if you think of the Count from Sesame Street, it's like, 1 glass of wine, 2 glasses of wine, So he gets her progressively drunker and drunker throughout the course of the party. And then she wakes up in the middle of the night, the windows open, The curtains are billowing, and this is where I'm telling you that if you've ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula, Count Padorsky is probably from friggin' Transylvania, and he's an honest-to-God vampire, because there he is in her bedroom. She has no idea how he got in there. And he basically says to her, I'm here to sleep with, I'm here to suck your blood. And he says, if you cry out, I'm going to kill your husband. If you don't sleep with me, I'm going to kill your husband. And beyond that, if you don't leave with me, if we don't adulterously run off together tonight, I'm going to kill your husband.
Nice guy.
Yeah, wonderful guy. One threat, two threats, three threats. Yeah, right. So she, fearing for her own and her husband's life, agrees to leave with Count Padorsky. And they run off from Seattle and just start hitting up gold mining towns until they end up in Goldfield. Now, of course, the defense says this is baloney. This is not at all what happened. This is just a woman who was taken in by the charms of the Count and decided to leave her husband, and that's the story. This is the story that comes out at the trial for murdering the Count. So let me put the facts in order a little bit. We know that Hines, in April of 1907, he walked into the Ajax in the red light district in Goldfield, and he guns down the Count. What I didn't mention is at that table with the Count is J.C. Hines's wife.
Okay.
Drama.
So Hines is going to rely on, at his trial, what is then referred to as the unwritten law. Kind of like, baseball, where, if you pimp a homer, then they've got to bean the next guy. One of these rules that doesn't actually exist, but people seem to hew to. And the unwritten law is that if you fuck with my wife, I can murder you, and it's basically legal.
Straight up murder. They're just like, we shrug that off here.
Right, well, exactly. I mean, it's Kinda Murdery town, but also just in the time. I mean, it's in the paper. They say, Hines will be relying on the unwritten law defense, and it's expected that he will prevail. And in fact, this unwritten law was such law, if you will, that Hines at his trial is represented by State Senator Morehouse from Nevada, as well as former Judge Vermalea. So it's not like he's some scummy guy that everybody in power wants to run away from. He's actually got on his defense team sort of the Johnny Cochran and Robert Kardashian of the day.
It sounds not just like there's an unwritten rule or law, but also that he is just a simply extremely well-connected person.
Yes.
And then adding on to that, given that this is an unwritten law, really, it kind of sounds like if you want to get away with murder in this town, all you have to do is ask your wife to accuse someone of hitting on them.
Oh my goodness, isn't that a fact and a sad chapter in American history all over this country? Yes, you are correct. So Here's where it gets fun, though, right? So at the trial, Judge Langdon is accused by the defense of being very pro-prosecution. And the reason for that is because he continuously disallows testimony that the defense wants to give. And the gist of that testimony is the way in which Count Dracula Padorsky seduced and mesmerized Mrs. Hines. He won't allow any testimony or evidence to that effect except for the testimony of Mrs. Hines herself. And when she gives this testimony, she not only ultimately collapses in court, like faints at the end of the testimony, but her husband, hard case murderer J.C. Hines, breaks down in racking sobs. So here's another piece of evidence that the judge was not able to disallow. And again, I believe Count Padorsky was a vampire, because the only other person who's allowed to testify on the behalf of Mrs. Padorsky is Mrs. Padorsky's mother, who says that the Count used hypnotism to essentially brainwash and control her daughter's mind, and that she left with him because she was literally in his supernatural thrall through the use of hypnotism and mind control.
So he truly is a vampire. I mean, the evidence is just getting... It's hard to ignore.
It is hard to ignore, which brings me to this. Remember that Arctic Brotherhood I was telling you about?
Yeah.
I think they are a bunch of fur-trapping, gold-mining, Van Helsing secret society vampire hunters.
Wow. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, given the current evidence. I mean, another question I have is, if he wasn't a vampire, how are they getting to these gold mining towns? Like, if he did technically, like, grab her and take her away, like, was this a car? Was this a horse and buggy? Was this some kind of vampire vehicle? What?
Turned into a bat.
Well, yeah. Well, and by the way, they say during her testimony how frail and wan she was, probably from having her blood drained on the regular.
Iron deficient.
But I imagine they were taking trains and that he had like a coffin in the caboose that he would sleep in every night. And in fact, Count Padorsky did have his very own Renfield. And that is another story that we will get into later. But so here's my theory. The Arctic Brotherhood, this secret Masonic society of vampire hunters, identify Count Padorsky when he's up in the Yukon looking for gold as a vampire. I don't think that Mrs. Hines is a victim at all. I think she's a member of the Van Helsing Vampire Hunting Society. And the plan becomes, okay, here's how we're going to take out Count Dracula here. Mrs. Hines, you are going to abscond with him as though you are cheating on your husband. He's going to load up his revolver with silver bullets. And then when he finds the two of you together, he has the perfect excuse to kill you. And we can easily cover it up because we have all these connections. We're going to get him represented by a senator and a former judge. We, the Brotherhood, are going to pay for his defense. We're going to make sure he gets off. And one more soulless, blood-sucking bastard Russian is going to be, vampire, is going to be out of this world.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. What scenario is he not a vampire? Just for my own peace of mind, because I want to go to bed tonight not thinking that, vampires are still out there or descendants of vampires are still out there. Like I already have a lot of nightmares. I don't need any more nightmares.
I feel you. So, in other words, when you go to bed tonight, you'd rather count sheep than be counting vampires like one vampire. Two vampires. I can't. I love it. I love the count.
We can keep riffing on the Count from Sesame Street, but the Count from Sesame Street didn't kill anybody as far as we know, right?
Yeah.
As far as we know.
As we know. And this is the thing. Now it's in my mind that vampires exist, and now I'm like, well, yeah, sure. The puppet could be an anthropomorphized vampire puppet.
The other thing to consider here, though, is the judge, which Zevon, you mentioned, who was very pro prosecution. So perhaps the judge himself is also a vampire and is sticking up for one of his own.
Yes. Yeah, perhaps. Now, so the scenario in which he's not a vampire is pretty compelling also, and that's the scenario in which he's basically a spy. I think he may in fact have been a Russian agent who was, scoping out the United States gold fields and wealth and hence power levels, and that these J.C. Hines and the Arctic Brotherhood may have been sort of the backwoods CIA. I think that's sort of Robert Ludlum crazy as that sounds. That might be slightly more plausible than the fact that he's the Count from Sesame Street. Although, when you said the Count from Sesame Street's never killed anyone, I just wanted to ask you, do you know anyone who has a delicious felt running through their veins? Because I don't.
I don't know anybody like that, but then again, I've been a vegetarian since 2006, and maybe I've eaten some felt in my life. Maybe I'm a Muppet cannibal.
Right? Maybe the world is maybe the world is littered with undead Muppets. The Count got the better of. So, after all, Mr. Hines is in fact fully acquitted of the murder of Count Padorsky. Basically, the jury buys into the unwritten law that, look, the guy messed with your wife, you were fully within your rights to gun him down, and that's the story. That is the conspiracy of vampire killing Yukon CIA craziness happening in 1907.
Wow. Cuckolding was really strange back then.
Oh, Brendan.
So, it's 2 days before Christmas in 1935 when George Edwards, James Sinclair, and Michael George Murphy blow the safe at the Goldfield post office and rob it. Does that sound mundane? Well, it's anything but. Let's check out Scourge of the Postmasters or Mom's Droopy Tulips. All right. Go ahead, Brandon. Let's make jokes about Mom's Droopy Tulips, please. Let's do it.
Nope. I'm not going to make any daddy jokes. It's fine.
Notice how Brendan doesn't make dad jokes. He makes daddy jokes, which is deeply
aware.
unsettling.
Fully aware.
Well, someone that goes by Bear, what did you expect?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, no. Okay, so it is 2 days before Christmas, and Goldfield postmaster J.J. Noon arrives at work early in the morning to discover smoke billowing out of his post office. And he hears this squealing sound, and he sees three men peel out and disappear in a souped up automobile. I'm basically just imagining the Batmobile of Model T Fords with a big old fucking jet engine in the back. They're like, "Wah," and they get on the fuck out of there. So it turns out these three guys had jimmied open the door of the post office and blown the safe with dynamite, knocked down a wall. And the postmaster walks in, and the post office is littered in mail. The safe is ajar. Everything has been taken. And, they straight up robbed the place.
What would you take back then, though? What mail would be worth taking?
I'm so glad you asked that. A few days later, Sheriff Joe Keene, literally Sheriff Joking. I can't make this shit up. Sheriff Joe Keene,
J.K.
J.K. gets a report of a couple of men at a local auto camp acting suspiciously. And by now, of course, there's a full-on $5,000 reward out for the postage thieves. He goes to the postage camp where he encounters George Edwards and James Sinclair, and he finds on them registered mail, a couple $100 in cash, several $100 in postage stamps, and hundreds and hundreds of blank money orders. Okay?
Oh, that'll do it.
Like the movie Blank Check.
Yeah, exactly. So here's where it gets pretty funny, if you ask me. So these guys, upon being captured, are then linked to 6 other post office robberies in the general area where, again, the safes have been dynamited, etc. So these dinguses, it's come on, rob a bank, rob a liquor store. You're literally stealing stamps. Who's gonna buy stamps? And you're stealing money orders. So are you who are they going to write those money orders to? Each other? So their signatures are all over everything. And they're like, "We're the stamp bandits, damn it." It's like Home Alone. They're like, no one else robs post offices, just us.
Look, I respect the consistency.
Yeah.
It's always nice.
They were
Good
just
to have a
developing a
brand.
collection.
Yeah.
Resale value in the 70s.
Yeah, true. Yeah, maybe they were just trying to collect the early. What would be a good celebrity for an old stamp? Would it just be Abe Lincoln?
Wild Bill Hickok, something like that.
William Jennings Bryan. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some good old celebrity stamps?
Al Jolson.
Oh no! I knew you were going to say that. I had a feeling.
Oh man,
Who was in Casablanca? Why can I not remember anything anymore because of the pandemic?
Right. Humphrey Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart.
Or Clark
Yeah,
Gable,
maybe
all those-
a Bogart stamp.
Totally. Yeah, I just think it's so funny. You're going through all this trouble to steal these blank money orders. That's where the real money would be. Except again, you write them to each other. What are you going to do? You're going to send them to your family and make them sign them. So now they're accessories. And by the way, when you rob a post office, that's a federal crime. When you rob a grocery store or some other or just about anything else, it's not. So these guys are just absolute dinguses, if you ask me. I don't know if you guys remember, but I said 3 men robbed the post office, right? Not just 2, and they've only caught 2 at this point.
So there's someone on the lam, is what you're saying.
There's someone on the lam, yes. And again, this is late December, just before Christmas, 1935. And the person on the lam
was Scott Baio. It was Scott Baio's grandfather. Who was it? Tell us.
I'm thinking of like on the lamb as like some kind of a bawdy Scottish farmer joke. The guy, the person on the lamb. Yeah. Anyway, his name was Michael George Murphy, a.k.a. George Huron. That's the one they didn't catch. And so he becomes, like one of those in the post office federal most wanted criminals. Like he's got his picture on the corkboard in every post office as somebody that they want to catch. He's on the top of the list there. But he seems to have gotten away absolutely, positively scot-free until June 3rd. And on June 3rd, it's reported in the newspaper that one Postmaster L.C. Rose in Lancaster, California, up there in the Antelope Valley, went to the post office in the morning and found, tacked to his corkboard next to the wanted poster of this Michael George Murphy, a note that says the following: "Warning for postmaster." And by the way, it's scrawled in very messy handwriting, and seems to be like illustrated with stick figures and things. And it says, "Warning for postmaster. We will be in town Sunday for business. Keep your trap shut. We will kill you on Monday if you tell the coppers what we're doing. Fair warning. Keep your trap shut."
So he drew attention to the fact that they were planning a job?
Mm-hmm. What is it about people with three names? Is that a thing with murder? Like you got to have three names
it
to murder?
It seems to be, doesn't it? It does
John
seem
Wayne
to
Gacy.
be.
John Wayne Gacy,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mama's Droopy Tulips.
Yeah.
That's my new stage name. Mama's...
Mommy's Droopy Tulips does sound like a pretty kick-ass like southern rock.
It's a jam band. No, it's a jam band, and they're playing at the Hula
100%.
Festival. That's what Mama's Droopy Tulips is from Athens, Georgia.
The MDT for short, right?
I'm an MDT head. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're
Going to take some DMT at the MDT show.
Like, we run into this thing fairly often where these people seem to be sort of shockingly low brain powered. I mean, think about the stamp bandits, the serial post office bandits. Like, look, if you've got the dynamite to blow a safe and you've got this souped up Model T fucking Batmobile to make your getaway in 1935 with a jet engine tacked to the back of it, go rob a bank. Go rob fucking Fort Knox. Don't steal stamps and money orders. It's like you gotta write a bunch of letters to grandma. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You have resources that don't really exist until Gotham 30 years later, and you're stealing stamps. And then here's a guy who's on a federal most wanted list, who's gotten away clean, essentially, because at this point it's 6 months after his buddies have already been busted. And now he's got to come into town to run some errands or something, and he feels the need to announce himself to the postmaster, basically saying, "I'm coming into town," because in his dim-witted mind, rather than just wearing like a wig or a hat like Carmen Sandiego or something, he's going to waltz in all broad daylight, and he's like, "Well, my picture's in the post office. The postmaster's going to know what I look like, so I have to preemptively threaten him and put him on guard." Like, what? Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a massive manhunt launched. There's a dragnet put out for Michael George Murphy because he's now added to his list of federal crimes, threatening the life of a U.S. postmaster, and they're expecting him in Lancaster on Sunday because he went and he tipped his hand to the postmaster. Well, they don't catch him. They don't catch him at all. And 2 days later, on June 5th, who should come forward and admit that he wrote the note but 11-year-old Dean Craig.
Huh.
Which is why the note was scrawled so messily, which is why it included illustrations, because the note was threatening the postmaster was written by an 11-year-old boy.
Wow.
And
Dean Cain. I can't believe it was Dean Cain of 90s Superman fame. I mean, he was so young.
Yeah, Dean Cain, yeah, exactly. I mean, he does a lot of things these days that I can't believe, I'll tell you that.
He's an alt-right fuckboy.
So Dean Craig is the person who makes this stick figure note. And then what happens? I mean, no allowance? What happens?
To Santa.
No money orders for you, Dean Cain.
You cannot be Superman for Halloween, little Dean Cain.
Yeah. So Dean Cain says, and this is sweet and almost heartbreaking in a way. Why did he write the note to threaten the postmaster? Keep in mind the note was posted on June 3rd. Well, he says, my grandmother got some flowers for my mother, and the damn postmaster, or the darn G. Willikers golly postmaster, he didn't deliver them for 3 weeks. So when they got to my mom, they were all terribly wilted and ruined. And he was so mad at the postmaster for this that he posed as a federally most wanted fugitive and threatened the man's life in his childishly illustrated handwritten note.
Smart kid.
Yeah.
Well, who's amongst us has not at least once posed as a criminally wanted murderer in order to, do good by their mother?
Right. Well, and to your point, June 3rd, the kid says this damn postmaster didn't deliver for 3 weeks till all the flowers were dead. About 3 weeks before June 3rd, what is that? That's Mother's Day. So I think what actually happened is sweet Dean Craig probably mowed a bunch of lawns, delivered some papers, did chores, earned enough money to buy flowers for his mother on Mother's Day, which his grandmother then ordered for him because he's a little kid. And those flowers came and were never delivered by lazy-ass postmaster L.C. Rose. Maybe because they were tulips and Rose has a thing where he only delivers roses. I don't know. But the poor kid was so crestfallen because he'd worked so hard to get flowers for Mommy, and then those flowers were fucking just destroyed by a lazy-ass postal worker. And we know we've all met a lazy-ass postal worker in our lives.
Yes, we have. So I mean, this kid was 11, is so sweet. What a sweetheart, saving up all summer, doing God knows what on the streets to make these flowers happen. When I was 11, I had a DVD of Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and I listened to Limp Bizkit and never did anything for my parents.
Oh, so did I.
This kid is a shining example to the youth of America, and Dean Cain for president is what I say.
Yes, Dean Craig. That's a crucial difference.
I am aware that it's not Dean Cain, but this is for comedic effect only. And I wish I was a better 11-year-old. This is making me sad.
You know what I love is that you said that this is wonderful, and what you said was that you watched Austin Powers, The Spy That Shagged Me, and listened to Limp Bizkit. So I'm thinking to myself, that's my man Slick. He watched the best movie ever while listening to the best band ever simultaneously.
Damn straight.
That's
I was a cool kid, but never not thoughtful enough to go to the store that was a block away, the florist, to buy flowers for my own mother. I'm a terrible son. Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I'll never be as good as Dean Craig.
Well, she's like, as long as you don't threaten the lives of federal officers. It's
I think she would probably think it was sweet. She'd be like, "Oh, my son loves me."
Right, loves me that much. And was so upset by the ruination of my Droopy Tulips that he was willing to commit a serious crime. But isn't that? I mean, what a phenomenal twist, right? You think there's this just evil bastard out there wants to steal some more stamp and frighten some more federal employees, and it turns out to be a little boy who's just so frustrated that he failed his mother on Mother's Day that he has to take out those frustrations drawing pictures and writing murdery notes. I mean, it's a movie. I love it. Okay, Slick, so this is the part of the show where, just like all of you guys, I get a little bit tired of hearing my own voice, and I want to find out a little bit more about you, and specifically, can you got any stories of, kind of weird, funny, bizarre, crazy, kind of murdery shit that's happened to you in your life? I mean, you pretty much set the bar pretty high with the science tree already.
Yeah. The science tree is kind of murdery. But I think growing up in Philadelphia, you just are prone to seeing weird shit all the time. And like, for example, I could give you 3 examples of growing up and seeing something absolutely traumatizing and terrible. Like, I was in Rittenhouse Square, which is sort of like the big park in downtown Philadelphia, and I saw a dude walk up to a trash can, open an empty pizza box, shit in the pizza box, close the pizza box, and walk off with it. He used the trash can as a toilet, right? He took a dump in the pizza box, he closed it, and then he walked away.
But was he carrying the pizza box as he walked away? Or
because like you'd assume that he would just throw it away in the trash can, like a one-stop shop. But then it's like, no, I got more to do with this pizza box.
Plans for the pizza box.
Wow. So, second story I'll tell you is that one time my mom and I were having lunch, and we were sitting at the window at this this nice like pub restaurant, midday, broad daylight Philadelphia, and a dude who kind of looked like when Ren and Stimpy would have like human characters, like they'd always have like these like really grotesque noses and like gray beards with like one hair on the top of the head, you know.
I thought you were going to say kind of looked like a Renaissance cosplayer, which I also would have just been all about. But yes, continue.
Yeah. So this guy just walks up to the window and starts staring at my mom and I, and we're like, oh boy. And then he just kind of slowly presses his face on the window, and he had a really big nose, and was just kind of like rubbing his nose on the window, and all the oil from his face was rubbing on the window. And my mom and I are like, all right, well, I guess we'll keep eating.
So he had like a giant wren nose, is what you're
saying. Yeah, he had like a giant, you know how like some of
Stimpy, whichever one.
Yeah, Stimpy would be the one with the big nose. Yeah,
okay, Stimpy,
But I'm thinking more along the lines of like when, like on Ren and Stimpy, when like Cupid would be on there, and he'd have like a huge nose and like a pimple and like a gray beard, a gray Lincoln beard, you know, like a chin strap beard,
like a guy that made Jimmy Durante look handsome, is what you're telling me. And he just pressed his face,
and it was like uncomfortably long. Like, oh, what's this dude doing? Is this his kink? Is like rubbing his nose on a window his kink? So I just grew up with that kind of stuff. And it's funny, like I started telling these stories to my wife when we started dating, and she was just like, oh, no wonder you're so strange. You know, that was just part of your life. You just saw a dude shit in a pizza box one time, and you had to just live with that.
You had to carry that pizza box full of shit with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Shit in a pizza box is our new hashtag. It is August of 1907, same year that Count Padorsky was killed. In fact, the trial of J.C. Hines has not even began yet, when Oxford and Cambridge educated, titled Englishman and genius mining engineer Richard Monsell is dining at the same Ajax restaurant in the Tenderloin where Count Padorsky was murdered for his lecherous ways. Here's what happens. In walks Goldfield Deputy Sheriff George Gibson, and he shoots Monsell dead. Here's the question. Why is Goldfield so deadly for a whoremongering continental nobleman? It might just be a vast, supernatural, international conspiracy. Let's find out as we dive into a pox on both your hoes, or hard luck for an English dandy. All right, so, I don't want to bury the lead here. Remember when I told you that Count Dracula Padorsky had his very own Renfield?
Yes.
That Renfield is none other than mining genius Richard Monsell. Richard Mansell, from a titled family in England, graduated from Cambridge and Oxford, went on to do postgraduate work in the United States, and was known to be the preeminent mining engineer in America at the time. He was also the bosom buddy and right-hand man of Count Padorsky. So, we remember how Count Padorsky died, right? Hines walked in, said, "You've been banging my wife. I invoke the unwritten law," and he shot him dead right there in the Ajax. Well, a mere few months later, let's see, Padorsky was killed in March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, about only 5 months later, Padorsky's right-hand man dies in exactly the same restaurant, except this time he's shot A, by a deputy sheriff, and, well, I don't have a B. There you go. That's me. That's me at sea hosting the show. But so here's how this happened, according to Deputy Sheriff George Gibson. George Gibson says, "I was in the Ajax myself," and George Gibson was reported as having a floozy, a woman, a prostitute, a sex worker, one on each arm. He had one on each arm. This wasn't the girlfriend experience. It's not as though he had his favorite sex worker with a heart of gold that he liked to pretend he was in love with and going to marry. He was literally shit-faced with a hoe on each arm. And he says that Richard Mansell, who was known far and wide to be just the absolute epitome of good manners and gentlemanliness, supposedly insulted one of these ladies of the night, and in defense of her honor, Deputy Sheriff George Gibson drew a gun and shot Mansell on the spot. Now, I mentioned the Arctic Brotherhood being a bunch of Van Helsing vampire hunters, and I think that when you think about a bunch of, Masonic Yukon Jack miners, everybody has their modus operandi. Sometimes even the smartest crooks get lazy. And it seems to me that in the process of taking out these continental vampires, they thought to themselves, well, we killed the Count in the Ajax for maligning someone's lady love. That sounds like a good way to take out Mansell as well. Or we've got the CIA angle, the pre-CIA, the OSS, the Secret Service. Because here's what happens next. At first, the paper reports that Mansell is so well thought of in town that certainly Gibson is going to be lynched. The headline actually says the next participant in a necktie party will be George Gibson for the killing of wonderful Mr. Richard Mansell. But who should show up to defend him in court but the very same Senator Morehouse who defended J.C. Hines? And he goes to trial, and a man named Tobish, who's one of the witnesses for the defense, starts to tell his side of the story, at which point another miner, a man named Jack Diamondfield Davis, stands up in court and basically starts threatening Tobish, like right there in the middle of the court, like, you shut up. You don't say another fucking word or I'm going to kill you. And so Diamondfield gets thrown in jail for contempt of court.
Wow.
Now, here's where the conspiracy angle comes in, or maybe not. Maybe Mansell really was just not nearly as sort of well-bred as we think. But there's conflicting stories about how this went down. Some people, obviously the prosecution says basically that Mansell was just sitting there at the table and that Gibson just walked in, floozy on each arm, and shot him dead. Other people say that the other side says Mansell asked a question of one of the sex workers. She took umbrage. Gibson grappled with him. They fought. He went down, and then Gibson shot him, and it was a whole thing. Well, the Gibson's defense, at one point in the trial, they exhumed the body of murdered Richard Mansell, and they perform an autopsy, and they remove his actual gelatinous brain.
Whoa.
Right. Then they put it in one of those, like, clear glass, dessert containers like Man with Two Brains, I keep referencing, and they bring it into court to show the jury. Why do they do that? Yeah. That's pretty wet.
But
why do they do this? Because they intend to demonstrate that Monsell had paresis. Paresis is mental degradation, physical degradation to your brain caused by late-stage syphilis. Which is actually what Benjamin Franklin died from, and can cause madness. So the emerging theory here is that essentially Monsell was a regular customer of streetwalkers, and he probably had a favorite one, which happened to be one of the girls on Gibson's arm. So he made some rude comment because Gibson was moving in on his girlfriend experience. That led to the altercation and to the murder.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, Gibson...
And Gibson was the sheriff, right?
Deputy Sheriff George Gibson. I mean, we have a... There's a long-standing
something wrong
trope. There. Yeah. There's a long-standing trope in this show of deputy sheriffs who have involvement with women of, quote, ill repute, murdering people. I mean, in this other episode, the guy was, what did you say, Adam? I am but a humble deputy sheriff and strip club owner.
That's the one.
Oh, man. So, but I also am thinking, right, if in fact Monsell is Count Padorsky's Renfield, that the Arctic Brotherhood of Van Helsing vampire hunters, they just got kind of lazy. They were like, this worked last time. Let's kill the other. Let's kill the Lewis to Count Padorsky's Lestat in the same restaurant for the same reason, and see if we get away with it. And in fact, Gibson is represented by the same lawyer, and they're able to pull enough strings to get a nobleman's brain in a dish in the court, like some unskulled John the Baptist, right? It's all pretty wild. And then what happens but a hung jury? 8 in favor of conviction, 4 in favor of letting him go. And so he does not get convicted of the murder.
Wow.
Wow.
No, I know, it's pretty wild.
Vampire hunters have a lot of pull in this town.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Who are they bribing? How are they getting away with this? Is it just like classic con artistry?
It's just on a deep spiritual level. Like, everybody knows that those blood-sucking bastards had to die. It just feels right to let the heroes go.
I guess so.
1 free murderer, 2 free murderers. Oh man, no, but so there's such outrage that Gibson was not convicted for murdering a guy that by all accounts was mild-mannered and an absolute gentleman, that he in fact gets put back on trial. And this time he is convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. But immediately his lawyer, Senator Morehouse, says, well, I'm going to be appealing this to the Supreme Court. So, again, there's this theme of there just seems to be very, very potent, entrenched power lined up in favor of both of these guys who assassinated on very thin pretense 2 different continental noblemen who happen to be, superhero and sidekick. And all of the defense was funded by this pseudo-Masonic Arctic Brotherhood, who at this point, though it was founded in the Yukon, had chapters all over America in basically every mining town in America, and there were a lot of mining towns because the mines weren't tapped out yet. So that brings me back to sort of the National Treasure version of this story, which is for some reason somebody high up in power needed these two guys, these 2 spies, out of the way. and that in fact both Hines and Gibson were agents of some kind of a they had a license to kill. They were American 007s, if you will.
I buy it. Why not?
Yeah, I'm buying it too. I'm buying what you're selling.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is our 5-star review of the week from a listener named Nim Chimsky. The title is 5 stars, smart and hilarious, and it says, after a night of heavy drinking with Howard Stern, Ken Burns wakes up hungover, sore, and satisfied. 9 months later, they name their love child Kinda Murdery. Thank you, very much.
Do you know who Nim Chimsky is?
I do not, except a clever play on a brilliant writer in Noam Chomsky.
Do you know? Like, there's actually a chimp named Nim Chimsky.
Oh, there. Wow, if we are fucking resonating with the primate community now, then this show is a bigger success than I had ever hoped.
Well, at the very least, the username is influenced by this chimp that's named after Noam Chomsky.
Really?
You can find a picture of Nim Chimsky on the internet, so you might want to pull that up for your own personal enjoyment later.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Well, that's our show. For Adam Volrich, Sean Christensen, and Brendan Hubbard, and of course the brilliant Mr. Eric Slick.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Zevon Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.
This is Kinda Murdery, Ghost Towns of the Mojave Desert, presented by Criminal Content. You can find us online at kindamurdery.com and on all social media at Kinda Murdery. Email us at contact@kindamurdery.com. Listen to us on all your favorite podcasting apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Google, and more. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends about the show.